My mom tried to put my name on her new loan without asking, so I froze my credit and told the bank everything. She said I ruined her life, but then my dad found out and kicked her out. Throwaway for obvious reasons. So I, female, 26, feel like my entire family has turned against me over something that should be basic privacy. My mom has been showing up to my apartment uninvited to organize my paperwork and taking pictures of my financial documents. And when I told her to stop, both my parents are acting like I'm some ungrateful brat. Am I the idiot for setting boundaries about my own personal financial information? Okay, so this is probably going to sound insane, but I need outside perspective because I'm starting to feel like I'm losing my mind here. Some background. My mom, female, 52, has always been the family's record keeper, her words not mine. Like she keeps filing cabinets for everything and gets genuinely upset if things aren't organized her way. When I lived at home, it drove me absolutely crazy because she'd go through my room and reorganize my stuff without asking. I moved out when I was 22, partly because of this controlling stuff, but also because I just needed space, you know. My dad, male, 54, always backs her up in any conflict. Always. He just goes, "Your mother is trying to help," and acts like I'm being difficult. My brother, male, 29, actually cut contact with the whole family about 2 years ago after some money fight that I honestly never got the full story on. My parents just say he abandoned us and refused to talk about what actually happened. Anyway, here's where it gets weird. About 2 weeks ago, I came home from work and found my mom already inside my apartment. She still has a spare key from when I had surgery last year. I was supposed to get it back, but honestly, I forgot and she never offered. She was sitting at my kitchen table with all my mail spread out, making these elaborate filing systems and asking super specific questions about my credit card interest rates and monthly expenses. I was like, "What the frick, Mom?" And she just acted all cheerful and said she was making me a proper filing system because mine was chaotic. It wasn't chaotic, I just keep things in a drawer like a normal person. But then she started asking really invasive stuff, like how much I spend on groceries and whether I was maxing out my credit cards. I felt uncomfortable, but she just brushed me off saying, "This is how I taught you to be responsible." She came back 2 more times that week, each time with even more elaborate organization plans and increasingly nosy questions about my finances. The second visit, she brought actual filing folders and labels. Who does that? The third visit, okay, this is where I really started freaking out. I walked into my apartment and she was taking pictures of my credit card statements with her phone. Like every single page spread out on my coffee table, photographing them one by one. When I asked what the hell she was doing, she said she was making digital backups for me and had already uploaded them to some family cloud storage thing for safekeeping. I was like, "Mom, why do you need copies of my personal financial information?" And she got all defensive and started this lecture about identity theft and keeping proper records like responsible adults do. She kept saying things like, "When you're older, you'll understand, and this is what families do for each other." I finally told her she needed to stop showing up uninvited and that I was uncomfortable with her having access to my financial stuff. I thought that was pretty reasonable, but apparently not. Both my parents insisted we have a family dinner to discuss this properly. I should have known it was a trap, honestly. The second I sat down, my dad immediately jumped in defending Mom. He said she's always handled the family's financial planning and that she's just looking out for everyone like she always has. Then my mom brought up my brother. She told me that my brother decided to cut them off too and asked if that's the kind of person I wanted to be. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait, what does this have to do with him? But they just kept going on about how I was being ungrateful and pushing family away like my brother did. I tried to explain that I just wanted privacy about my own money and that showing up uninvited made me uncomfortable. But Dad just kept saying, "Your mother has never done anything but try to help this family." And Mom started crying about how she raised me better than this. The whole thing was just nuts. I felt like I was being ganged up on for asking for basic boundaries. I mean, I never gave her permission to photograph my financial documents or put them in family cloud storage. That feels like a pretty big violation of privacy, right? But now I'm second-guessing myself because they're both so upset and keep texting me about how I'm punishing Mom for caring. My dad sent this long message about how families are supposed to help each other and that I'm being selfish, like my brother was. I keep thinking about what happened with my brother and how they talk about him now. Like maybe there's more to that story than they've told me. But also, maybe I am being too much about the paperwork thing. I honestly don't know anymore. I guess I just want to know if asking for privacy about my own financial information makes me a terrible daughter, because that's sure how I'm being made to feel right now. Am I the idiot for telling my mom to stop organizing my paperwork and taking pictures of my financial document? Information to add. Since people are asking about the spare key thing, yeah, I know I should have gotten it back sooner. After my surgery last year, she was helping me with grocery shopping and stuff, and it just felt awkward to ask for it back when she was being so helpful. I kept meaning to bring it up, but honestly forgot about it until this whole situation started. Now I'm definitely getting my locks changed, because clearly she thinks having a key means she can just come and go as she pleases. To those wondering what my brother's money fight was about, I genuinely don't know the full story. What I do know is that 2 years ago, my parents were asking him for help with something. They never told me what exactly, and apparently he said no, and then there was this huge blow-up. My parents just say he turned his back on family, but they won't give details. Now I'm wondering if there's a pattern here, with them having money issues and expecting their kids to solve it. For everyone asking if my mom has always been this controlling, unfortunately, yes. When I lived at home, she would go through my backpack, reorganize my dresser drawers, and even call my college professors if I mentioned getting a bad grade. She says it's because her parents were disorganized and they lost their house when she was little, so she's determined to keep everyone on track. But honestly, it just feels suffocating. Now for the first update, I found out why my mom really wanted my financial info, and it has nothing to do with organization. Okay, so you guys were right about my mom not letting this go. But honestly, I wasn't prepared for how crazy this would get. There is so much to figure out here, and I'm still thinking through all of it. But basically, I found out the whole organization thing was complete bullshit. Quick recap for anyone new. My mom has been showing up to my apartment uninvited to go through my financial documents and even took pictures of my credit card statement. When I asked her to stop, both my parents acted like I was being ungrateful and dramatic. Well, turns out there was way more going on. So after our big family dinner fight thing, I've been keeping my distance from both of them. Not full no contact like my brother did, but just minimal communication, like responding to texts but not really engaging beyond basic stuff. But then last week, my mom calls me out of nowhere and she's being all chatty and normal, asking about work and whatever. Nothing weird at first. But then she randomly asked me about some new Italian place downtown and if I liked the tiramisu there. And I'm just sitting there like, what Italian place? I literally had no idea what she was talking about, so I asked what place she meant, and she mentioned some place called Marcello's and asked if I went there last Tuesday. I got this horrible feeling, because yeah, I did go to this new Italian restaurant last Tuesday, but I never told her about it. Never mentioned it to anyone in my family, actually. And she knew specific details like, how the hell did she know I went there? When I asked how she knew about it, she got all flustered and said I must have mentioned it and that she thought I said something about trying new restaurants. But I know I didn't tell her. I'm not paranoid, I don't think. But I'm pretty careful about what I share with my mom because she has this thing where she gives unsolicited opinions about everything I do. So I'm freaking out internally, but trying to play it cool. And I ask again how she knew. She gets all defensive and starts this whole speech about how she just worries and wants to make sure I'm eating well and going to safe places. Then she goes on this tangent about how the neighborhood around that restaurant is questionable and she hopes I'm being careful. That's when it clicked. The credit card statements. She had pictures of all my transactions. But wait, this was a recent purchase after I'd started keeping distance from them. I suddenly realized she might still have access to my online banking, or maybe I was still on some family account I'd forgotten about. I waited until we hung up, and then I went through my credit card statements from the past month. And there it was. Marcello's Italian Kitchen. Last Tuesday, $47.83, along with every other place I'd been, every purchase I'd made. I was so angry I couldn't even think straight. But before I could call her back, my friend Jessica calls me completely confused. She's like, hey, this might be weird, but your mom messaged me on Facebook asking about your dating life. Apparently my mom had sent her this long message asking if I was seeing anyone special and whether Jessica thought whoever I was dating was appropriate for me. Jessica sent me screenshots and it was so uncomfortable to read. My mom was asking all these leading questions about whether I'd mentioned bringing anyone home for holidays, and if Jessica thought he treats me well, and if he seems stable financially. The worst part, I'm not even dating anyone right now. I've been single for like 3 months, but I haven't told my family because, honestly, I just wanted a break from my mom's constant questions about my love life. But get this, Jessica tells me that my mom specifically mentioned being concerned about me going to romantic restaurants and wanted to know if I was being secretive about a relationship. Like she had come up with this entire theory about my dating life based on restaurant purchases. I was furious. I called my mom immediately and confronted her about messaging my friends. She tried to deny it at first, but then admitted she was just concerned and wanted to make sure I was making good choices. When I brought up the restaurant thing again, she finally broke down and admitted she's been keeping track of where I go for safety reasons. Safety reasons. For going to dinner, in broad daylight, in perfectly safe parts of town. But it gets worse. My dad gets on the phone, of course, and instead of being horrified that his wife is stalking our daughter, he starts defending her. He says they're both worried about my lifestyle and that I've been going to bars and restaurants they don't know anything about. I'm like, I'm 26 years old. I don't need to clear my dinner plans with you guys. But then my dad says something that just made everything click. He tells me they just want to make sure I'm not spending time with questionable people or in questionable places, and that they've noticed some concerning patterns from my credit card statements that they've been analyzing, like I'm some kind of criminal they're investigating. Turns out they've been working together on this. My mom takes the pictures, and then they both go through them looking for red flags. Dad mentioned they were worried about charges at certain bars. God forbid I have a drink with coworkers, and restaurants in neighborhoods they consider sketchy. They've been putting together like a file about my social life, based on where I spend money. I can't even wrap my head around how messed up that is. The whole conversation ended with them both insisting they're just looking out for me and that I should be grateful they care enough to stay involved. My mom started crying about how she raised me to be careful and she just wants to protect me from bad influences. I hung up on them. I've never done that before, but I just couldn't listen to anymore. Now I'm sitting here wondering what other aspects of my life they've been monitoring. Like, do they track my grocery purchases to judge my diet? Are they analyzing my gas station charges to figure out where I'm driving? It's making me paranoid about everything. I keep thinking about my brother and wondering if this is why he cut contact. Because honestly, if someone was tracking my every move through my financial information and then interrogating my friends about my personal life, I'd probably want to disappear too. I'm supposed to get my locks changed tomorrow. Finally, I kept putting it off after the dinner fight, but this situation made it urgent again. But like, how do I even begin to address this level of boundary violation? They genuinely think stalking my financial activity and Facebook stalking my friends is normal concerned parent actions. I feel like I'm going crazy because part of me is wondering if maybe I am overreacting. Like they keep saying they're just worried about me. But tracking someone's restaurant purchases and coming up with theories about their dating life from credit card data seems really not normal, right? Anyway, that's my update. My parents are financial stalkers who think they're just being helpful, and I apparently can't even go to dinner without it becoming family nonsense. Edit. 1. Since people are asking, yes, I'm changing all my passwords and getting my locks changed. I'm also thinking about changing banks just to be safe, since who knows what other access she might have. 2. To everyone wondering about my brother's situation, I'm seriously considering reaching out to him now. I'm starting to think maybe he wasn't the selfish one after all. Number 3, for those asking if I've considered going no contact, honestly, yeah, I'm thinking about it. This feels like such a huge violation of trust, and I don't know how to come back from it. Now for the second update, you guys were right about everything getting worse, but I honestly wasn't prepared for how much worse. Like I thought the financial stalking was bad enough, but apparently that was just the beginning, and now everything has completely exploded. And I don't even know where to start. Quick recap for anyone new. My parents were showing up uninvited to go through my financial documents and taking pictures of my credit card statements, then using that info to stalk my daily activities and even interrogate my friends about my dating life. I cut contact 3 weeks ago after finding all this out, so I blocked both their numbers after that last phone call and finally got my locks changed the next day, like I'd planned. I know that sounds harsh, but honestly, I just needed space to think, you know? Like every conversation with them was making me feel more and more insane. But apparently blocking their main numbers didn't stop anything. For the first week, they kept leaving voicemails from random numbers. Like my mom would call from her work phone, then dad's work phone, then what I think was a neighbor's number. All the messages were the same defensive stuff about how I was overreacting and punishing them for caring, and how they were just trying to be good parents. The second week, the tone started shifting. Dad's messages got less defensive and more desperate, I guess. He kept saying stuff like we really need to talk about exploring options and that mom was not handling the stress well and having panic attacks, which honestly made me feel terrible because, I don't want my mom having panic attacks. But also, I wasn't the one who decided to stalk my financial information, so. By the third week, Dad was leaving these rambling voicemails that didn't really make sense. Stuff about being behind on payments and needing to work something out before he'd catch himself and just say, "Call me back, please just call me back." I was starting to get worried. Something was seriously wrong, but also, I was still so angry about the whole situation. Then 2 days ago, I woke up to a credit monitoring alert on my phone. You know those things that tell you when someone checks your credit? Yeah, well, apparently someone had submitted a loan application using my information, my social security number, income information, everything. I immediately called the credit monitoring company and they confirmed someone had applied for a $47,000 personal loan using my identity. I was like, what the actual hell? So I froze my credit right away and called the bank that issued the alert. This is where it gets really messed up. The bank's fraud department told me they have to contact all parties involved in fraudulent applications, which means they called the phone number listed on the application, which was my parents' house number. So my dad gets this call from the bank's fraud department asking about an unauthorized loan application. And that's apparently when he found out what my mom had been doing with those photographed financial documents. She had used all my information from the credit card statements and bank papers she photographed to fill out a loan application. Without telling me, without telling my dad, just stole my identity to try to get money. I honestly can't believe I'm even typing this. I keep reading it back thinking this sounds too insane to be real, but unfortunately, this is my actual life right now. Dad called me from his work phone that afternoon, completely panicked. His voice was shaking, and he just started rambling about how he had no idea, how sorry he was, how he never would have allowed it if he'd known. Dad was crying on the phone and explained that while he knew Mom was tracking my spending habits, he thought it was just being overprotective. He told me he thought they were just making sure I was safe and had no idea she was planning to use that information to steal my identity. He said there's a huge difference between being nosy parents and committing actual fraud. Then he tells me the whole truth about why Mom was really going through my financial stuff. Turns out they're 3 months behind on their mortgage and facing foreclosure. Dad lost his job 8 months ago and has been working part-time at some warehouse thing, but it's not nearly enough to cover their bills. They've been struggling this whole time, and Mom was evaluating my financial situation to see if I'd be a good candidate to co-sign on a loan. But here's the really messed up part. They already asked my brother for help 2 years ago and he said no. And apparently they asked other family members too, and everyone said no. So instead of, maybe asking me directly or being honest about their situation, Mom decided to just steal my identity and forge a loan application. Dad was crying on the phone. I've never heard my dad cry before, and it was honestly terrifying. He kept saying he threw Mom out of the house when he found out about the identity theft and that she's been staying at her sister's place. He was like, I can't believe she would do something criminal. I had no idea she was capable of this. Then came the really fun part. That night, I got 39 missed calls. 39. Mom called from 6 different numbers begging me to call the bank back and say it was a misunderstanding. She left these rambling voicemails about how I was destroying her life and she was just trying to help the family, and why couldn't I just work with her on this? Some of the messages didn't even make sense, like she was having a complete breakdown. Dad called 3 times to apologize and promise he had no idea what she was planning. He kept saying, I know this looks terrible, but I swear I didn't know, and honestly, I think I believe him. He sounded genuinely shocked and horrified. But then my brother called. My brother, who I haven't talked to in 2 years, because my parents always said he abandoned the family. Turns out Mom had contacted him in desperation, asking him to call me and convince me to drop the fraud charges, which I haven't even filed yet, but apparently she's terrified I will. When I finally called him back yesterday, we had this really long conversation about what happened with him 2 years ago. And guys, it was pretty much the exact same thing. They asked him for money for the house. He said he couldn't afford it, and suddenly he was selfish and turning his back on family. The difference is he didn't let them guilt trip him into staying in contact like I've been doing. He told me that Mom called him crying about how I was being vindictive and trying to destroy the family by reporting the identity theft. She apparently told him I was just like him and that both her children had turned against her when she needed us most. My brother was like, dude, she literally stole your identity. That's not some family fight, that's a crime. Which, honestly, yeah, I keep getting caught up in the family guilt stuff, but she committed actual identity theft using my personal information. Oh, and apparently after Mom told extended family that I was refusing to help with their foreclosure situation, several aunts and uncles started calling too. Because now the whole family knows about their money problems and everyone's taking sides about whether I should help them or not. I'm so overwhelmed, I can barely think straight. Like 3 weeks ago, I thought the worst thing was that my mom being controlling about my paperwork. Now I find out they're losing their house. My mom is apparently a criminal. My dad has been lying about his job situation. And half my extended family thinks I'm a terrible person for not helping with money I didn't even know they needed. I keep going back and forth between feeling horrible for them, like losing your house is awful, and I do feel bad that Dad lost his job, and being absolutely furious that instead of just asking for help like normal people, they decided to violate my privacy, stalk my activities, and ultimately steal my identity. My brother thinks I should press charges because she needs to face consequences for criminal actions. But she's still my mom, you know? Even though she did this insane thing, the thought of her going to jail makes me feel sick. But then I think about how she was taking pictures of my credit card statements and lying about it for weeks, and tracking my restaurant purchases to build theories about my dating life, and messaging my friends behind my back, and then using all that stolen information to try to get a loan in my name without telling me. When I write it all out like that, it sounds completely unhinged. But my extended family keeps calling saying stuff like, families help each other, and your parents are going through a hard time. And I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm being too harsh about the whole thing. Although honestly, if someone who wasn't my parent had done this stuff, I wouldn't hesitate to report it. Like if some random person had stolen my financial documents and used them to apply for loans, that would obviously be identity theft and fraud, right? I don't know what to do. The bank is waiting for me to decide whether to file a police report. My mom is apparently having a complete breakdown at my aunt's house. My dad is trying to handle the foreclosure alone while also dealing with his wife becoming a criminal. My brother is offering support but also pushing me to not let her get away with this. And everyone else has opinions about what I should do. 3 weeks ago, my biggest problem was my mom being too involved in my life. Now I'm trying to decide whether to have her arrested for identity theft while she's potentially losing her house. I honestly don't know how any of this became my life. Edit 1. For everyone asking about the credit freeze, yes, I did it immediately after getting the alert, and I'm also disputing the inquiry with all 3 credit bureaus. The bank said the application was denied anyway because there were some inconsistencies, but still. Edit 2. To those wondering about the foreclosure timeline, apparently they have about 6 weeks before they actually lose the house. Dad is trying to work out some kind of payment plan with the mortgage company, but honestly, I don't think his part-time warehouse job is going to be enough. Edit 3. Since people are asking about my brother's advice, he said their money problems aren't my responsibility, and that Mom crossing into criminal actions proves she's too far gone to reason with. He thinks if I don't press charges, she'll just try something else because she's desperate. Part of me thinks he's right, but it's also easy for him to say since he already cut contact.